Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is another Lost in the Pond reaction, and it's been a few days since I've done a video reaction. Just had a couple of days off because I think it's been like 3 weeks pretty consistently. But we're back, and this one is 5 ways British and American meal etiquette is very different. Now I'm gonna assume this is to do with like meal etiquette in the home, because I guess maybe when people are out at restaurants and stuff in the US and the UK, certain things like how you talk to waiters, etc., the people that serve you your food, will sort of vary and be different between the countries, because obviously in the US, certain things like tipping and obviously the waiters sort of help you more. But that's not really what meal etiquette is it? It's just like things you do at the table, I'm pretty sure. I don't actually know, but that's just my prejudgment. But yeah, I mean, let's just get into this one. I'm interested to see this one, see what he says. And yeah, check his channel in the description, and links to his channel in the description. Sorry, it's been a few days, so I'm not knowing how to talk with the intros. But yeah, links to his channel in the description. He deserves like a sub or a view on his channel or whatever it is, because his videos are very interesting. And I know some people will enjoy his videos, but yeah, man, let's just get into this. Let's check this out and see what he has to say.
If they hear your accent and you are American, their ears might prick up a bit, thinking, "Here comes a payday." Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to how we eat, dining etiquette. It's so important, especially when you're meeting your American family for the first time. I'm not talking from experience, maybe just a bit. Cultural differences around the dinner table don't just come down to the words we use, like chips versus fries, or the dishes that we serve. So, you know, America's pecan pie versus Britain's spotted dick, and that is an actual dessert, okay? Look it up.
I've never had it, bro. I've never had spotted dick. I've never had spotted dick. It's nothing that I've considered like having the things in. I think it's like raisins and things like that, and them things in cakes do not go well with me, man. But spotted dick, it doesn't even look like an appealing thing. But the name, I don't know why there's that name.
Just not on your work computer. But it's also about some of the mechanisms that we use to get it into our mouths. I'm still talking about food. And also some of the customs and politeness norms that comes with the process of eating. And so without further crab rangoon, here are 5 ways that British and American eating etiquette is very, very different. Whether you call it cutlery, like we do in Britain, or silverware or flatware, or in this case plasticware, because, you know, we are rationing, we can all agree that without them, meal times would be very, very messy, especially in America where they put sauce on everything. But the real question is, how do we hold them? And this was part of my existential crisis.
I found out recently, I hold the fork in my right hand and the knife in my left hand. Apparently that's not normal. I thought everyone did that. I just thought if your strong hand is your right hand or your strong hand is your left hand, you'd have the fork in your strong hand. But apparently it's not normal to do that. I don't know, it's weird.
After I moved to the United States, because I grew up learning the European style, or as it might be known here, the continental style. And when I say that, I'm referring to what is the official utensil etiquette, right? As opposed to the official American etiquette. And I'm going to show you, I think anyway, some of the differences. I personally don't have either etiquette completely down, because in my wife's words, I still eat like a toddler. But it mostly comes down to how we hold the fork. In Britain, you hold it kind of like that, I think. So you've got it, the end of it's touching your palm, and then you sort of grasp it with your thumb and your pointy finger, and it's there for pointing downward, right? And you stick it into the potatoes or the strawberries or the spotted dick. And notice it's in my left hand. That's going to be important in a moment. And in the other hand, you have your knife, right? Usually like this, with the pointy finger right there, and it's touching your palm again. So consistent on both hands, right? It's almost an extension of you. You're almost Wolverine, but from the United Kingdom or Europe. And then you do this, right? Usually at a lower level. You wouldn't be able to see it because my arms are off screen now, so I'll put them back there. And then you cut into the potatoes or the strawberries or the creamy spotted dick. I mean, you can come with custard. That's normal. And voila, and put it in your mouth. There's nothing on this. This isn't that scene in Hook where they eat invisible food. It goes this way round, right, with the tines facing downward toward your tongue. In America, it's quite a bit different, right? So people will hold their fork like this, with the tines facing upward. In other words, to kind of scoop up the...
Now I think about it, I don't even know what I do. I don't know how I hold it. I have no idea. I just know I hold the fork in my right hand.
Right? So they'll do that. And actually sometimes, not every time, I mean, I'm sure there are people that circumvent all of the things you hear in this very list, but sometimes Americans won't even use a knife, right? You'll just see them scoop something up, maybe a potato. We won't go through the entire list.
Wait, do I hold the fork in my right hand? No. I don't even know now. Because I don't think I'll be able to cut with my left hand. I'm confused now. What hand do I use?
List again, put it in their mouth. If they want to cut up things in that way, sometimes they'll do it with the fork, right? Don't recommend it with plastic forks. You know, you can get through these pretty quickly if you do that. But if they do use a knife, they may turn the fork like this into the potato and then cut like that. You've got it there, you turn it back around, it's in your gob, and there you go. Bob's your uncle, you've got potatoes. And, you know, that's what a lot of Americans do. My father-in-law, though, did this. He had it like that and like that. He'd turn it that way, and then like that. It sort of looked, I should tell you that my in-laws were cavemen. But it was through those very cavemen / dear relatives of my wife that I was first introduced to our next entry.
Saying grace.
Yes, saying grace. This one is quite a tough entry in many ways because, you know, in order to talk about it, I do have to somewhat generalise. And also, I don't have much data to back up what I'm about to say. It's more observationally driven, right? So when I lived in England for 27 years of my life, I don't say that with disdain. It was a good time. But in all that time, I don't really remember sitting down to a dinner function of any kind and really sort of saying grace beforehand. In other words, kicking off the meal with a sort of faith-based thanks. Now, part of that, and again, this is where the generalisation comes in, so bear with me, but in England, we tend to be less sort of like publicly open or just sort of even privately open, if you can be, among your family members about your religious beliefs. Whereas in the United States, I think people are more sort of proud of that, whatever their religious faith is. And so sometimes in some families, and this again could be regional, so I might well be generalizing, but some families, including the extended relatives that I married into, I didn't marry them, I married into the family. Some families, and I gather maybe quite a lot of families here in the United States, particularly at special events like Thanksgiving or maybe even a homecoming of some kind, will sort of say grace before the meal. And there'll usually be one family member who stands up and says it on behalf of the entire group. And then you say amen and go about your way. For me, it was quite weird at first, I think. Now, I'm very respectful of other people's religious beliefs. I didn't really know what to do except just sort of sit there and then wait for it to be done. And then, because I had half a mind on the turkey. So what are you going to do? And because I'm generalising here, it's important for me to say that this is my experience. I'd be very interested to hear other people's experiences, other Europeans' experiences of coming here and maybe having to say grace when they're not used to it, or, you know, Americans that don't themselves practice this. I've also heard it can go one step further here where the whole family holds hands. You know, I definitely draw the line at that, especially right now. The best way that I can put this for British people watching back home is, you know, in football when, you know, somebody dies and they have a minute's silence within the stadium, and then when the minute's silence is up, they all erupt in applause and all of that. It's kind of like that, minus the applause. You know, it's just an amen. But the energy after that is great because you all want to tuck into your food. And because the energy's so good, that leads us on to our next entry.
That's definitely an interesting one. Again, it probably is down to families because obviously not everyone in the US is religious and not everyone in the UK isn't religious. And they do, like, it probably does work both ways, but it's still an interesting thing. I guess maybe, like you said, it is just more common to happen in the US.
Oh, I don't mind a bit of chatter and exceptionally weird noises. And at an American dinner table, you're going to get a lot of chatter, usually. Again, this is another generalization, but on the whole, this is my experience. And I'm one of those people who doesn't think that Americans are always loud, as the stereotype dictates, but one exception tends to be in restaurants, right? I do hear the volume go up there as compared to Britain, where it feels like we're always battling with this war within ourselves to not air our dirty laundry in public. I'm not saying we don't talk at dinner tables, don't get me wrong. It feels observationally, once again, and again, there's no data on this. There's not somebody going around measuring the decibels in every restaurant in either country, especially right now because they're all closed. But that's my general experience of it. Now, I could be getting thrown off course a little bit here because, you know, my wife's family are really loud. Don't tell them I said that, although this is a public video. They know it's true. I've told them before, and that's why we've not spoken in a year.
Also, only got 800k views on this. That's one of his most viewed videos as well, so I'm sure they see
But
this.
here in America, you might...
But I can't lie, I'm weird. Like, if I don't know someone, I'm really quiet. But if I know people, I am probably the loudest person you'll meet. I can't control my volume. Sometimes I'll just be talking normally to my girlfriend and I'm just speaking loud without actually knowing. It's just weird. I need some like sort of volume control. I'm just a loud person.
be in a restaurant, sitting down with just one other person, trying to
Genuinely.
have a quiet, intimate conversation, and to your right there's this really loud family with a 5-year-old running around with a stupid hat on that he got from the restaurant, right? So they're further enhancing the volume of said family. And then on the other side there's clearly what is a date happening, and the woman is just sitting there quietly looking quite glum, while the man very audibly and haphazardly talks about all of the Fortune 500 companies he's worked for, and she stares into space, presumably thinking of all the ways that she can get out of there. But on the other hand, once you do get used to that sort of raised volume, it does add to the atmosphere, you know. And if you're already in a good mood and you enter somewhere where thousands, oh, that's a huge restaurant, hundreds maybe, where there's lots of people and they're in a good mood, and it just sort of bounces off the walls, you know. But speaking of restaurants, that brings us on to our next entry. Servers, servers, servers. My heart does go out to all of the servers and anybody else to whom this applies around the world who can't go into work right now. And a huge thank you to delivery servers who are able to keep people fed who might need it. But, you know, back in peacetime when the restaurants were still open, there was quite a marked difference between, you know, British servers and American servers, and the way they sort of conduct themselves at the dinner table.
So actually, I did actually guess this then, so I wasn't actually too far
You're
off.
eating your dinner. In Britain, they're quite standoffish, and I know that's just a trait of British people in general. I get that. But they don't have the incentive, which we'll talk about in a minute, to constantly be coming back to your table and seeing how you're doing, checking if you need a refill on that water, because you probably won't get one anyway. I'm joking, of course you'll get a free refill on your water, just nothing else. Often, know this, if you want their attention, you're going to have to get their attention yourself, and that includes when it comes time to pay the bill. Whereas in the United States, and each restaurant has its different policy on this, you know, the waiting staff will come to your table every 5 minutes.
I can actually kind of see this because I've gone to restaurants obviously as a kid, and I've always, and obviously a bit older than a kid as a teenager or whatever as an adult. I'd say I'm an adult now, and yeah, a lot of 99.9% of the restaurants it is kind of like that. You have to sort of get their attention. But I stayed at a hotel once, and we went to an American. It was a restaurant, and there was I think there was like a couple Americans worked there. It was like an American restaurant or something like that, and the people who worked there were also American, and they came like they were a lot more sort of like, in terms of like serving you, they'd come like every so often asking if you want refills, asking if we need anything else, and it was so different to me. I think it was quite like a more expensive restaurant as to what usually I would go to. So maybe it was a mix of that and the fact that they were American, but it was a real sort of weird difference. It was nice in the same way, but it was just a weird new thing that I've never sort of experienced myself. But I don't know if that's the same comparison. Maybe it's not actually as much of that, and it was just a restaurant. But I just thought that was quite interesting when I did experience it.
Usually just to see how you're doing, and it seemingly doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a seriously one-sided conversation about the Fortune 500 companies you've worked for. They will still come over and go, hey,
my mouth's full like with some ribs or something. I've got barbecue sauce around my mouth, and they're just asking if I need anything else, and I'm just like, I can't say
what's
anything.
up? How's that tenderloin working out for you? And there are a couple of big reasons, I think, that American serving staff do this. Firstly, the company often dictates it. It's seen as a kind of data-driven way of, you know, having good customer service. But having good customer service could well dictate this.
Oh, so it is
Have
actually
they
true of
tried
restaurants.
antifreeze with that? No. Well, he might go back to his milk phase eventually. Yeah. So the dreaded tip, or at least it was dreaded to me when I first moved to America, actually, when I landed at Philadelphia Airport. This is the first time I remember having to sort of navigate the American tipping system, because I bought a drink at a bar at that very airport. And having bought the Jack Daniels, or 6, I'm not a good flyer. I turned to the gentleman next to me and I asked him, how does tipping work? And, he very, very kindly offered, well, whatever the amount is on your receipt, just give them 85% of that. And that's about good. That's standard. That was a lie. And I ended up almost bankrupt. Firstly, in the United States, regardless of the amount, it's very much expected that you do tip because that's basically how servers make their wage. And the standard amount that you're expected to tip is the complete opposite of 85%. It's 15%, right? But if you thought it was good service, or just to be sort of a good person, really, you can definitely tip more than that. I typically tip. Just try saying that after 6 whiskeys. I did that night. I typically tip, particularly if I'm on a trip, 20%, or I might even round up to 21 if it kind of requires it. Tipping of some kind is expected here. In the UK, if you're thinking of going there, firstly, don't do that right now, but if after all this blows over you are fancying going to the UK, then you're not required to tip at all, right? I mean, people get paid a sort of living wage more or less for being a server in the UK. It's good practice, if you want to do.
You do still tip here. I know you do. My friend said his sister gets tipped quite a lot of work. So I guess tipping does depend where you work and all that kind of stuff. But again, it is a thing here, but nowhere near as much. Like, nowhere near as much.
That you certainly can. 10% is recommended. And growing up in the UK, I never really did tip all that often, I must say. I think if I were to live there now, I probably would do so a bit more. It's not expected. I mean, servers aren't going to expect you to tip. Although, if they hear your accent and you are American, their ears might prick up a bit thinking, here comes a payday, right? Whereas it's the other way round here. As soon as servers hear a British accent, they must be filled with dread. Or maybe that's not true. Maybe servers hear a British accent and think, he's ripe for manipulation. I've had some bad experiences. That's it for this episode. Thank you for joining me today. And, it's kind of sad that I couldn't practice a lot of these things for the video, except for the knives and forks, and those were the last plastics I have. As ever, a reminder that you can keep up with me and all my stupid...
And add that. Quick shout out to him and all his socials, his Instagram, his Twitter, obviously his YouTube. Support all those. It would be appreciated. But another banger of a video. It's just so interesting to see the differences. I was happy that I kind of guessed it right at the start. I didn't know if it was just going to be sort of meal etiquette and like just in family homes, like people just at the table. But he obviously did go to restaurants as well. Perhaps Americans could have quieter dinner conversations if the restaurant turned down the damn background music so that we can hear each other at standard indoor conversation volume. As an introvert, British servers sound lovely. In London last year, I was having lunch at a pub. I got on very well with the bartender and asked about tipping. His response was perfect. It's not expected, but we don't mind it. When my son was 8, he asked to say grace at a special dinner. He bowed his head and started talking. A lady at the table interrupted him, saying, "Stop mumbling, I can't understand you." He looked up at her and replied, "That's okay, I'm not talking to you." Then he continued with no further interruptions. I really enjoy hearing about the customs of people outside America. I just love seeing the differences. It is actually really just weirdly fun to see. Parents who allow their kids to wander around in restaurants should be asked to leave. Like my mother used to say, your fork is not a shovel, and if I shut my eyes, I can convince myself that you heard David Mitchell. Yeah, I forgot. I can't remember which side. Like, I can't think of it. I only know when I actually do it. I think I hold the fork in my left hand actually because I cut with my right hand. I can't cut with my right hand. Yeah, I hold the fork in my left hand. No, I hold the fork in my right. I don't know. I think it's in my right hand. I don't know. I just know I was told it's like rare in comparison to what most people do, whichever side that is. But yeah, how do I actually know? I'm just saying irrelevant stuff at this point. But hopefully you enjoyed this one, and until next time, like, subscribe, and peace.